I've been talking this whole time about using plyometrics to develop maximal force and maximal power. And that's going to mean low rep, very high intensity, maybe 3 to 5 reps, take a full minute off, let your central nervous system recover, and then do that again. And you stop when the athlete is no longer meeting the intensity bar, meaning they're no longer able to jump onto that high box, or reach up and touch the PVC, or move weight with the same speed if you're using a wattage meter on your barbell. Sometimes though, we take a plyometric activity like box jumps and we put it into a conditioning context. So earlier in this video, I spoke about the force curve and how you recruit muscle fiber from slow to fast. So if this is your type 1 muscle fiber, slow twitch, endurance type stuff, repetitive, this is at this end of the spectrum. The other type is type 2, which would be the more fast twitch, explosive muscle. Now, you have to fatigue your slow twitch muscle fiber. You have to overcome its capacity before these fibers are recruited. And it's because the resilience factor of these fibers is very low. You're going to see a lot more injury to these fibers. This is where like micro tearing comes from. This is also where most of the size and power comes from. So we want athletes to be using these fibers, but we don't want them to be using them in a repetitive way that's going to cause injury or overuse or exhaustion. So when we're doing a high rep plyometric type movement like a box jump, we're not going to be going anywhere near a max. So what we're not going to be doing, if this athlete's max box jump is 40 inches, they can squat and jump onto a 40-inch box, you're not going to be using that for high reps. Maybe you'd be using, say, a 20-inch box for a lot of reps down here. Now, is there a linear correlation between reps and intensity? No, there's no straight line because every athlete is going to be different, especially determined by their genetic makeup. I might have more slow twitch fibers than you do, just as part of my DNA, the way that I'm put together. So this athlete, a power lifter, an Olympic lifter, they want one all-out effort. They're not going to do 2 reps at 95% because that's impossible. They can't reproduce that much force more than once. A runner, though, can produce like 80% of their max 20 times in a row because they're very good at being efficient with their energy. But their max is not going to be that high. So if we want to get really, really good at lifting big weights, we have to keep things in the lower rep, higher intensity range to see benefit. If we don't, if we start doing higher rep stuff, number one, we lose that intensity because we can't keep jumping onto the 40-inch box over and over and over again. It's just too much on your central nervous system to produce that maximal force. And recall again that your central nervous system requires more rest than the muscles do. So if we're doing higher reps, that force necessarily decreases and we start recruiting more and more slow twitch fiber, wiring in that efficiency of, I'm going to be doing a lot of these, I better conserve my energy. When powerlifters, weightlifters start doing high rep stuff, it doesn't make them more resilient to injury. It doesn't make them more explosive because they're doing more volume at an explosive type activity. What it does is make them better conditioned. If you're at the top of your game, I would not suggest doing high rep plyometric movements or high rep any movements, because what that's going to do is teach your body to conserve energy, stick with slower twitch muscle fiber, and actually impair your ability to recruit that all-out one-time effort. Plyometrics were created to promote that all-out one-time effort, and so traditionally they'd be done in rep ranges of 3 to 5, but again with maximal intensity. So what happens when we take that box jump and we do a lot of reps? Well, the force curve moves to the left. So we're going to be doing a sub-maximal type plyometric over and over and over again. So why is that effective? Why does that improve conditioning? It doesn't make us more powerful, so let's remove that right away. Unless we're completely unfamiliar with doing squats of any kind, doing a really high rep squat is not going to make us more powerful. If we are unfamiliar with squats of any kind, doing a high rep squat will make us more powerful because we'll become more efficient at flexing your knees and extending your hips. So you'll wire that in better, you'll become more efficient, you'll improve rate of force development that way. You will not improve force development just by sheer quantity of muscle that is recruited. You will not improve it by the type of muscle, the fast twitch that's recruited. What it will do, though, is force you to take on the characteristics that you would take on during a maximal effort lift. So when I'm going to do a max effort lift or a max effort box jump, I do something called the Valsalva maneuver. I close the glottis in my throat and I pressurize my spine by pushing my diaphragm down. So it creates this hard core around my spine, this bracing pillow of really compressed air. When I'm doing a regular box jump, I still have to do the Valsalva maneuver. So what happens is I close my glottis, I'm not breathing, I'm pressurizing with my diaphragm, I'm holding my breath basically, and creating this pressure to protect my spine. And if you're doing that for a long time, it's like being submerged in water. You're holding your breath and you're pressurizing. So when you rise back up and you take a breath again, your heart rate is elevated. And it feels like you're working really, really hard. And you are, but you're not working hard at becoming more explosive. You're just working hard at breathing better. The other option would be like skipping. So when you start skipping, it's exhausting. Your central nervous system is not efficient. So you have to think about every skip that you do and your body has to relearn the movement over and over. But boxers can skip for a half an hour and they've got this light sweat on and maybe they're breathing hard just from like the minimal bracing required to absorb the skip in your spine. They are getting a conditioning effect, but they're no longer getting a plyometric effect. It's not making them stronger at pushing off from their feet or being explosive in plantar flexion. So what we need to differentiate here is what is plyometric and what is a movement that's typically used in plyometrics being used for conditioning. A plyometric is overcoming an eccentric motion with maximal return force, rebounding, elasticity, minimizing that amortization phase. A conditioning movement or a plyometric movement being used in conditioning is using a submaximal similar movement over and over and over again. I'm going to argue that doing a high rep box jump loses plyometric value. You can't call it a plyometric move anymore. It's just the same type of movement that you would be using in a plyometric. This is where the lines get blurred, and this is why there's this misunderstanding of high rep box jumps doing a lot of plyometrics. In the following videos, you're going to learn how to warm up for plyometrics. You're going to learn how to do a lot of different plyometric drills like bounding. But I want you to keep in mind that to be optimally effective at creating strength and power, rep ranges of plyometrics should be like under 5, and reps of plyometrics should probably be under 5, but you should be monitoring the outcome. So if an athlete is bounding down the track, okay, and it's taking them 6 strides to get 20 meters, good. And then they do it again and they're getting 20 meters in about 6 strides, good. And they do it again and they're getting about 19.5 meters in 6 strides. And they try it one more time and now they're down to 19.25 meters in 6 strides. You're losing the efficacy and you're training the body to preserve force instead of using maximal force like you might want in sport. Keep that in mind when you're prescribing rep ranges for plyometrics.